Let's take a look at Christ's resurrection. It's the cornerstone of Christianity. The Apostle Paul said, "If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith." That's 1 Corinthians 15:14. So how do we know if Christ rose from the dead? We weren't there, so how do we know? It's the same way a jury makes a decision in a court case. They hear the evidence, then render a verdict. You don't have to be an eyewitness to decide the facts. 4 lines of evidence support Christ's resurrection. Each start with the letter E. Execution. Christ died. Empty tomb. Eyewitnesses. People saw him alive. And early testimony. Christ's resurrection was proclaimed right from the very start of the church. It wasn't a legend that grew up later. Let's take a look at these facts in closer detail. But first, consider this. Alternative theories fail because it's not enough to explain one piece of the puzzle. A case is made by explaining all the evidence. So what's the evidence? The first piece stands for execution. Most scholars in the field, even atheists, believe that Jesus actually lived and was crucified. Anyone saying otherwise goes against established scholarship. The next E stands for empty tomb. Right from the start, people acknowledged that the tomb was empty. Even the enemies of Jesus admitted this. But does that prove Jesus resurrected? No, but the case for the resurrection is cumulative. That's the problem with alternative theories. They always focus on just one piece of the puzzle, but not all the facts. So let's move on. The next piece stands for eyewitnesses. There were 2 types of eyewitnesses. Some were believers. For over 40 days, at various times and places, the risen Christ appeared to different groups of believers. On one occasion, the risen Jesus appeared to over 500 people. That wasn't a hallucination. Hallucinations are a personal matter, not a large group experience. Jesus also appeared to unbelievers, James, Jesus' half-brother, and Saul, a persecutor of the early church. Neither wished for Christ's resurrection, but both saw him alive. Some say that people just made this up, but many died for the belief that Jesus resurrected. People may die for what they believe is true, but not for what they know is false. A final piece of the evidence is early testimony. Scholars believe that Paul's book, 1 Corinthians, was written about 25 years after Jesus' death. But the resurrection source that Paul quotes in chapter 15, verse 3, dates to within a few months of Jesus' death. The evidence shows the early belief in Christ's resurrection. So when we look at all 4 lines of evidence, Christ's execution, the empty tomb, the eyewitnesses, and the early testimony, it leads to one conclusion. Christ rose from the dead. Paul puts it this way: if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. He then adds, "For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." This is a decision that each one of us makes one way or another. Is Jesus Lord? Is he risen from the dead? What do you think the evidence says? Your decision makes all the difference.